Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today my distinguished guest is Tia Brown. Tia, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Reggie?
I am all right. I thank you so much for choosing to come and be on the show and get into a little bit of what it takes to be considered a genius. I've seen your website. I've browsed through it a little bit, and I see your genius shining through. I just got to make sure that you see it as well. So, to just jump right into it, Tia, I just got my first question for you, and it's this. Do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Not a genius. No, not a genius.
Okay, that's interesting. Now you got me curious. Like, what if you don't see? Because the way you framed it and the way you said it, your tone, you're saying something without saying something.
Oh, yeah.
What do you see yourself as then?
I see myself as someone who is highly intelligent. Once I get an idea and I put passion behind it, it's like a dog with a bone. I'm not letting it go.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going full throttle. But when I think of a genius, I think of, like innovators and people who really change the trajectory of, what the world looks like today.
Okay. So
that's a bar that's really high.
It is high, but everybody has a vision of something that they feel like they're called to do. And that vision is large. But as large as the vision is, you have to start somewhere that's lesser than where the vision is taking you. And so you can't get to world impact until you can see yourself impacting your community, impacting your environment, impacting your home, right? And so that's a smaller execution of the larger vision. And so you can't get to the vision until you at least take that smaller step. So this is a part of taking that smaller step. You began to say something like you said, when you think of genius, you think of innovators. So my second question for you is, who comes to mind? What face, what name comes to mind when you hear this word genius?
Well, because I'm passionate about heart health, I have to say Dr. Daniel Williams, who is the first African-American cardiologist to perform open heart surgery. And that just pops up in my head because that's something I'm passionate about. So, yeah. So
I appreciate that you named Dr. Williams, because I mean, we in February, it's Black History Month.
It's Black History Month.
Go ahead and put a name out there that looks like us. And so that gets into something very important, because over the year that I've been doing these one-on-one sessions, what I found is those who are readily able to identify themselves as genius, when I ask who they see as genius, most of the time they're going to identify somebody that looks like them. Can't really aspire to be a genius if the people who you label as genius look nothing like you.
That's good.
There's this kind of implied separation that begins to happen. And this is important for us, even when we delve into this, because I do this for youth in schools. When I start talking to youth at a young age, do you know who the number one answer is that most people say?
No. Who?
So before I go there, you're already tapping into what your unique genius is, because I've heard you say this twice already. You said passion, and we're going to get into how that defines what your genius is. And that should be more what describes it, what defines it more so than a person. So the number one answer that I've heard is Albert Einstein.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not trying to take anything away from Einstein, but what I am trying to add to the spectrum of genius is that he was only one type.
That's right.
And when you started off saying, I'm very intelligent, and I believe you, Tia, but all genius is not academically related to what your GPA is or what your IQ is, right? And if we keep framing it that way, we're boxing out an entire generation of people who are like, I don't have a high GPA. I don't know what E equals MC squared is. So I mean, Einstein's a genius, I'm not. When they associate him to this genius, they disassociate it from themselves. Especially if they don't look nothing. I don't know nobody. I've never seen a person, Tia. You gotta let me know if you've seen somebody that looks like Einstein.
I haven't.
You know what? God truly broke the mold when he made that brother. It's like nobody else would ever look like this man in life, right? So we gotta try and find people that look like us, that are in something that we're passionate about, to be able to say, hey, you know what? If they have it, I have it.
Yeah.
So the people who have been more inclined to say, yes, I'm a genius, are people who I interviewed who said, hey, look, my mom is a genius, my dad is a genius, my child is a genius. And when they see it in somebody that they can relate to biologically, they're more prone to say, you know what, it's in me too. And that
Right.
to even the generational aspect of it, which we'll talk about a little later. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure I'm not like talking and filling up all the space. Do you have anything that you want to say, anything that's coming to your mind before we move on to the next section?
I agree with everything that you said, Reggie. I do feel like sometimes we hold these images in our head of people that are on a high bar, and we don't look at all the tiny steps it took and how many failures it took for them to even get to that point. And quite honestly, sometimes when you reach that point, you still don't feel like I haven't done anything, because I feel that way about some of the things that I've accomplished. Like, I still haven't achieved, the overall goal. I still feel that way. So I agree with you. I think sometimes we can kind of cancel ourselves out prematurely.
Oh man, cancel culture for ourselves, huh? Okay. I mean, and it's true though. Like, I don't know what this is in us. It's a form of humility, but I'm going to even redefine humility a little bit, like how I redefine genius,
I
because
like that. That is what it is. That is what
yeah,
it is.
we'll see in somebody else real quick, like, oh man, what you're doing is genius. But it's like, oh, what I'm doing, that's common. That's nothing. It's like, but then somebody else will come along and be like, man, what you're doing is genius, right? And we need to hear
Right,
that, because
right.
we don't do well enough self-affirming, right? And
That's true.
feeling like we have something to contribute to the people around us. And that's
Mhm,
what genius really is. It's not about us, it's about our impact and our ability to contribute to those around us.
mhm.
So I want to redefine humility for you. Okay.
Okay.
Humility, most of the time we think of it from one perspective, just like with Einstein and genius, where we say, hey, do not think too highly of yourself. But
Mhm.
humility also includes do not think too lowly of yourself either.
Mm. I didn't think about it, the latter.
Yeah.
I did not think about that. That's
I'm
different.
gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna pull my faith into it for a quick second. I don't know if you are a believer in Jesus Christ the way I
I am.
am.
I am.
So it's seeing that you are we not made in the image and likeness of God?
We are.
So if we're made in the image and likeness of God, but we keep like downplaying ourselves, in truth, we're downplaying our creator.
Okay.
And he made us uniquely. I might have to change this. This might turn from Inkwell Spoken to Manu Forte Ministries. I do this from two perspectives. I do
Okay.
this from a secular perspective, and then I do this from a faith-based perspective. We're gonna see how this goes. I might have to switch my outro. It might be Manu Forte Ministries by the time we finish, but we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see how it goes. So yeah, that's to me how I define humility, understanding that God has put something very unique on the inside of me, on the inside of you, on the inside of all of us, because we are his solution to the brokenness that's in the world.
That is true.
It's true, right?
It's a lot of brokenness in the world, and a lot of people need help.
A lot of people need help, and in many different, it's so broken. I just think I'm getting an image of a shattered mirror or a shattered glass. It breaks into 100,000 different pieces, and those pieces get into the grit of, you can clean it up, but then like a month later, you'd be like, oh, what was that? And you're like, man, that's from that mirror I broke,
Mhm.
ago. It stays. That brokenness is hard to sweep up. And what we have been placed on this earth to do is to begin to address the brokenness, but each of us is equipped to address it in a different way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So from there, I have a quote for you. Okay. It purportedly comes from Einstein. Einstein knew something about this genius that people were beginning to ascribe to him while he was alive. And if this really comes from him, he understood it and was like, yeah, no, don't pigeonhole me, because in doing so, you're pigeonholing yourselves. So you ready for the quote?
Mhm. I'm ready.
All right. Here's the quote. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it will spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
That's deep.
It is deep, right?
That is deep.
Let me know, like, how's that hitting you? How are you processing that? What is it saying to you?
first of all, I think this fish is out of its element. And
Right.
you are trying to judge it based off something that maybe is your element. But if you were to put this fish in a aquatic water environment, then the opposite could happen to you.
Hey.
So I think we're all unique. We all have our special abilities and talents, but I think you got to have the right environment to for it to go.
You got it. You got it. There's many different ways to interpret this, but I love how you interpreted it, right? Because you put it on the other side and say, hey, look, somebody could fool around and judge you, like take you out of your element and then judge you. And now you looking like below the pool, right? Like
right.
Genius is not about saying I know all things and I can do everything. It's saying basically in corporate America, you will be called like your subject matter expert.
SME, yep.
Expert at, right? I mean, I'm sure if you put him in the wrong element or maybe the right element, he would look like a fool. He would look like he was completely ignorant, right?
Very true.
So we have to stop in this quote, which very much becomes a metaphor. I see Einstein as a bear.
Okay.
He climbs trees. That's what the tree is physics. He climbed trees. That's what he did. But why are you measuring or allowing other people to measure us by, and you hit it on the head, by something that's not, we weren't designed to do. That's not my element. In this picture that I have in my mind, there's the tree, there's a fish at the root trying to hold on for dear life and climb this tree. There's the bear, and then there's two things that are right off camera, but you can't see. One, to the left, I almost see like this is an island, right? And what is an island surrounded by?
Water.
And so this element that the fish is designed for is very near, but it's so focused on somebody keep telling me I got to climb this tree. This must be what I'm supposed to do. If the fish does not know what it was designed for, does not know its destiny, does not know its purpose, it will allow somebody to literally lift it up out of its element and say, here, thrive over here. And he'll be like, okay, I'll try. But what happens if a fish stays out of water for too long, Tia?
Dies. It needs water. It needs to be in its element
to survive.
Right.
So what I see, Tia, is a bunch of dying genius around me. And I feel like it's my job to revitalize, resuscitate, and resurrect the dying genius around me by figuring out what people's element is and making sure that they get placed in that so that they can thrive. Because the fish has scales, gills, fins. It's streamlined to function at a high level in water.
Right.
And I know like COVID has been crazy. We've been seeing some wild stuff in the earth for the past 3 years. But if I look outside right now and I see a tree with a fish in it, it's time to get off. I'm like, you know what? It's irreparable. It's beyond broken now. It's dysfunctional. We got to go to Mars. Like trees, we know inherently that fish don't belong in trees, and we have to make sure that we do that for ourselves. The other thing that I see off camera is like this person that keeps coming along every day and being like, hey, climb this tree, fish, or why haven't you climbed this yet? You see people do that to us, especially minorities, all the time. Get out of our element and then be like, well, why aren't you thriving? You should be doing this. Yes. And it's a form of discrimination, which we all have. We all carry inherently discrimination on the inside of us. But when you act out your prejudice on a person without taking time to see who they are themselves, when you're like, look, to make my world make sense, this is who you are. Right. That's the thing I have a problem with.
Right. And I do too.
What I'm trying to do, I sensed it. I thought you might. What I'm trying to do with this podcast and with this book that I've come out with is if people can begin to self-affirm and self-identify genius outside of you knowing that your name is Tia, you should be like, second nature, I'm a genius. So that when somebody comes along and puts this label on you, that's anything less than that, you're like, sorry, that's not who I am. Right. And our children need that especially because the media inundates them with plenty of images and plenty of messages that's not really who they are. But if you know who they are, they're like, well, that person, and you know, if it's a young Black male, I've been that, they're like, okay, I see that, you know, all I see on TV are rappers, musicians, athletes, and what have you. And so if somebody begins to come to me and say, hey, look, you should be doing this, because, you know, I eventually got tall. I was short for a long time. And people begin to tell me, like, you should do this. And I was like, yeah, no, but I'm academic, though. Like, I want to focus on my books. But If I
Right.
didn't have this ground level of knowing, like, no, that's not who I am, I might have started to acquiesce to what somebody else needed me to be in their world, and I would have been, my genius would have been dying,
It's true. That's
right?
very, that's true.
So that's where we are. So, you know, the next logical question, Tia, is, well, how do I find my element, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's how we help you find your element. Genius, I'm going to break it down to three components, okay? It's your passion, your talent, and your purpose. I think everybody has those three things. And
Mm-hmm.
we can discover and link those three things together. We can unlock your genius.
Right.
Right? So let's get into it. You've already, like I said, you've already gotten into it because you started talking about passion like within 5 minutes of being on the show. So, but I'm going to pause for a second because we got
Okay.
to define what passion is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna do a similar thing with genius that I'm gonna do with passion. What comes to mind? What words come to mind when you hear this word passion?
Temperature rising,
All right.
tenacity,
Mm-hmm.
intense,
Mm-hmm.
a fervor, a love, something that comes from within, deep inside. You can do it for free.
That's yes. Yes. When I first started doing these workshops, I would go to schools and they were like, we can't pay you. I don't care. This message is too important. I need to empower the youth that are in this district. I don't care if you don't pay me. I need to get out there. And so it's somebody else. I like the word fervor that you use, by the way. Somebody else has described it as the gas in your tank. Like, man, when you come up against an obstacle, you won't care how big it is. You won't care how wide it is. You're like, I'm either going to go through it, around it, over it, or under it. But I'm going to get on the other side of this thing because
Yeah.
that thing is preventing me from getting at the thing that I am passionate about. And so one of the other words that you mentioned, Tia, is love. And what I want to do is come from the exact opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to love. I want to tie your passion to actually what you hate.
Mm.
And I can't take credit for tying it to that because there's a book that I read by this dude. His name is Mike Murdock. And the book was simple. It was called The Assignment. And he was like, if you want to figure out, well, he was a Christian author. He said, if you want to figure out what you've been designed, purposed, destined to do, you got to start tapping into what you hate. Because this gets back to the brokenness of the world. The brokenness of the world touches each of us in a different way. When it touches us, it traumatizes us.
Yeah, it does.
Grieves our heart. When we see it, we're like, ooh, I don't like that. I know some people feel real strongly about saying hate, but one, that's the way I can get kids to talk. If I ask kids what they hate, they can like, oh, snap, like you got, how much time you got, right? So I use that word because it is supposed to invoke this very strong, like, what is it that really rubs me the wrong way? And going back to humility and knowing whose image and likeness we're made in and how we are the solution for the earth, the brokenness that is in the earth, God sees it, God feels it, it grieves his heart, and he will grieve your heart with a portion of what grieves his heart. So it gets your attention. So you'd be like, man, somebody should do something about that. And Tia, if you, every time you get around your friends, if a certain thing happens and they're like, don't let Tia see that because she's about to go off. She about to like, and if you see it and they're like, oh man,
Yeah.
you done messed up now.
Mm-hmm.
That thing, if you keep saying somebody should fix that, somebody should, guess who the somebody is?
You.
It's you.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten your attention because you're the one who was actually put on the planet to do something about it. And it's not like you won't find other people who have your passion too, but what they don't have is your talent. And we'll get into how those two things are related to address the thing that's broken. Right. So having defined or redefined passion linked to what it is that you actually hate, can you tell me, Tia, what is it that you hate?
There's lots that I hate, but one thing that I really dislike, and this stemmed from going on a journey with my mom who had cancer, family members who has been sick, but then most recently my daughter being born with a congenital heart defect, is looking at the inequality in the workforce, in the medical field. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tie it in with cardiology because my daughter pediatrics, and not seeing enough of us being represented. Mm-hmm. And after speaking with multiple doctors and nurses and different disciplines within the medical field, I mean, there is a problem.
Yes.
There's a problem. And it's known, minorities, African-Americans, Hispanics, we are put at a disadvantage because I think people are pre-programmed, whether that comes from them doing their residencies or internships or whatever they do before they get licensed to practice. They're pre-programmed to just blanket statement you.
Yep.
You're Black. They came in with a pain in their side. Oh, it's diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that link? And my blood pressure is fine. I don't have diabetes, my cholesterol and everything is good. I have a pain in my side. How did we just come to that conclusion? And
Right.
so you can see it even when it comes down to Black women in maternity.
Yes.
A lot of us are dying because we're not getting the care.
Morbidity.
So it's so many things that I don't like, but overall it's the inequality. And I told myself I need to make a difference.
Mhm.
And because I'm on this journey, I feel like I have the means to do it.
I believe you do too. You mind me asking, like, how old is your daughter?
She's 5.
She's 5. Okay.
5.
And that's what I saw on the website that you sent me prior to. And that's how I knew, like, yeah, she's tapping into it.
Yeah.
The thing, and I see what you're talking about, because like when we, my wife and I moved down here 2 years ago. And when I moved down here, shortly thereafter, my blood pressure started like just getting high. And I'm like, this is weird. And I went to the doctor and they immediately was just like, okay, we got to put you on this medication, that medication.
Yep.
I was, wait a second though. Like the baseline that you're comparing my blood pressure to, yeah, it's higher than the 120/80. Even they're saying that that's high now. And I'm like, first of all, it's a moving target. But then secondly, are you considering the fact that African Americans being born in this country, and I have a doctor who has medical proof of this, like the stress that we inherit being born in this country raises our blood pressure.
Yep.
So not to say that it's fine. It needs to be monitored. It needs to be checked. But maybe 120/80 isn't my baseline. Mm-hmm. And so before you get so ready to put me on medication that I'm gonna have to stick on for the rest of my life, make sure you're looking at what data you polled to say that, hey, this is abnormal. Because most of the time the data that they look at doesn't have African American, doesn't have minorities included in it. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't even make sense. So you have to, and unless you notice, you can't advocate for yourself. And I see you clearly as an advocate for your daughter, and for yourself, for your family, because it's like, no, don't prejudge my condition without taking all the different input into consideration that you typically don't deal with.
That's right.
But I'm jumping into your passion. I'm gonna let you. we found one of your elements, right? Clearly. Mm-hmm. So the question then becomes, when you figure out, when you have something that's broken in your house, the first thing that you might do is kind of check it out and see the level of brokenness, and then assess your ability. Like, do I have it within me to fix this, or do I need to call somebody in?
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you assess that, I think I can fix this myself, what's the next thing that you're going to do? What are you going to look for once you put it in your mind that I can fix this?
I'm going to gather all my tools, make sure I have all the right things with me so I can go through the checklist.
That's exactly what you'll find. Mm-hmm. So do you know what tool that you have that helps you address your passion?
Oh, yeah.
It's your talent.
Mm-hmm.
Your talent. And then I'm going to jump to the end of the equation, because the purpose is actually simpler than we've made it over the years. Your purpose is to figure out what your God-given talent is, realize that it's a tool in your hand to begin to address the brokenness that's driving your passion. And if you can figure that out, see it like you're going to begin to unlock your genius. You're going to begin to do something that not only benefits you and your loved ones, but it's going to begin to grow beyond you and get into that vision we talked about earlier. It's larger than you now. Because there are other people who are going to have similar tools. There are other people who are going to have similar passions. And when you begin to address this issue from different angles, you're going to begin to break it down so that it begins to be fixed in the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I feel like I want to give you an example, because I kind of rushed through talent. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on talent in a moment. But I want to go back to passion for a quick second. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So a real life example of how this works, but how it's being misdiagnosed, but how it could work if we just tweak things a little bit, is I was called to a school, an elementary school, to talk to 10 little boys on like a weekly basis. They were all minority kids. They were in the third, fourth, and fifth grade, but they were on IEPs, what we would have called special ed back in the day. And so instantly when I came in there talking about, hey, you're all geniuses, they was like, shoot, this guy, like, who are you talking to? Like this, you in the wrong classroom, sir. And they got offended. They actually took offense to me putting a positive label on them. Do you know why they took offense to me putting a positive label on them?
Because people, and it could be family too, have always told them that you're not smart, that you're not intelligent enough to do this stuff.
They were used to negative affirmations.
Yeah.
They were used to, and you got a learning disability. You got ADD, you got ADHD, you're emotionally, imbalanced. You're disruptive in class, all these different things. And so it was like, all right. So, they proceeded to continue to roast one another. They were just roasting one another. And I'm like, oh, so you're more comfortable like putting yourselves down than me coming in with a positive label. I said, okay, I get it, fine. Right. But remember, I told you, I know how to get youth to talk to. I was like, so can you tell me what you hate though? And it was like, dude, like, really? Like, you want to ask me what I hate?
Yeah.
And what I saw was these 10 little boys came together as one unit. They never could agree on anything, but they agreed on this one thing. They all almost at the same time told me that, Mr. Key, we hate school. And I was like, that makes sense. And they thought they had thrown off my whole workshop. It was like, yeah, but you didn't expect us to say that though. And I was like, well, I mean, think back to the fish. If the fish could talk, it would tell you, I hate this tree. This tree keeps making me feel like I'm dumb. Somebody keeps telling me I need to do something with this tree, but I'm not equipped to do it. And so they aren't equipped. They've been told that they're not equipped to be functional in school. But in fact, the school represents a system that's broken in the world. Right?
I believe that, yes.
I haven't come across anybody that's like, no, the school system works perfectly fine. Like, no, it's like, yeah, it's broken though. It's an old model that needs to be revitalized and revamped. And the solution was right in front of me. These 10 little boys. Here's why, and here's how the solution was right in front of me. There's 8 different learning styles, but at most schools only teach from 3. And so if you're not a left brain thinker, which means you're logical and you understand math, if you don't process information visually or verbally, then you're gonna be short in school. You're gonna go to school every day and you're gonna hear this information. And you're gonna be like, I don't understand what they're saying. I can't process this, man. I'm stupid. But if we explore the other learning styles, like one learning style is expeditionary, which means that you got to put your hand on stuff, or exploratory. But every time they're going to put their hand on something, they're told, hey, sit, be still. No, I said the wrong thing. They're like, keep your hands to yourself. Stop that. You're like, I can't learn now. The other thing is a kinesthetic learner, where they got to move around. But every time they get up to move, like, hey, sit down, be still. Hey, I can't process this information. Or they're creative, they're right brain thinkers. And so what I told them was, you've been equipped with something that is being suppressed in school. But if you took your learning style and instead of running away from this system that you hate, if you ran towards it like David ran towards Goliath and was like, I'm about to take this joker's head off. If you ran towards the school system and flipped your learning style into a teaching style, now you're bringing a solution that was absent into the system. Now, if you're a kinesthetic learner and you become a kinesthetic teacher, you're going to reach other kinesthetic students. And they're not going to feel like a fish out of water anymore.
Right.
And so that's a very real life example of how you can take what somebody is labeling as a deficiency, but it's in your wheelhouse. Like, take this and flip this and actually address the thing that traumatized me as a child so that nobody else gets traumatized the same way.
Right. Yeah.
So that gets us back to talent. I'm going to ask you what your talent is in a moment, but we already kind of addressed how people treat their talent. We recognize other people's talents. Beyonce's tickets I saw like something on the floor is like $6,000. That's insane. But we recognize other people's talent, but we overlook our own. And I'm gonna go to the Bible again. I mentioned David and Goliath real quick, but Moses was like that too. When Moses was told, like, hey, look, I need you to free my people, he was like, yeah, but I stutter though.
I have a speech problem. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, man, I made your mouth. Like, I know what your shortcomings are. That's not what I asked you. This is what I need you to do. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna give you your brother. He's gonna speak on your behalf. And Moses was still like, yeah, but he was like, dude, okay, what's in your hand? He was like, it's just my walking staff. He was like, yeah, put that on the ground. And you know what happened? It turned into a snake. He was like, okay, pick it up by the tail, turn it back into a staff. What he was telling him was, you're gonna rock, you're going to do mighty miracles by what's already in your hand. You're already equipped. And our talent is like that. Like talent is within us because talent is generational. Like there are things that are in our family lines. We gotta, genius is about seeing that things are bigger than just you. Your talent that manifests in you is something that's been trying to manifest for generations, but maybe the opportunities and the resources haven't been available to help it thrive. And so having said that, like, I just want to ask you, do you know what your talent is? Do you see it as generational?
Yes and no.
Okay.
But there's some that I think unique to me, and I think some of it is, a lot of it is generational.
Okay. So what's your talent to you?
The one that I think is unique to me is I like graphic arts. But if you think about it, I mean, I come from a creative family, so to speak, when it comes to business. A lot of them own businesses, still own businesses. They come up with creative ways and make something out of nothing.
Okay.
A musical family. I mean, singing, the band, we've done it all. But I took it as far as graphic arts and marketing, which kind of can tie into that. But then there are other talents that I have that I think, the way I describe it, I don't think they're quite as tangible.
Okay.
Talents such as, I think I have a talent for listening to people, being empathetic to them, but not taking on those emotions myself, but trying to help them figure out a way to get to a solution. How can we get you these resources? So I feel like I have a heart for nonprofit. One side of it is nonprofit, and the other side is just let me express my creativity. But I'm using it towards my talent, I mean, my passion.
Gotcha. So, I'm going to I want you to definitely mention your website. I looked at it and I see what you're doing. For those who have the same heart condition that your daughter has, you started a scholarship fund, which completely makes it completely shows you bringing these pieces together and being like, this is how I can help not just my daughter, but other people who have children with this condition. And even in the empathy that you have, beyond providing a platform to create resources for people, because I can't imagine what the medical costs are, even with insurance. What I see you being able to do as well is to be able to talk to a parent who's going through, like, you've had this in your daughter since she was a baby, and I can't imagine how some of your nights must have been when you're like, is my daughter going to, like, anytime anything goes off, what's happening with my daughter? Is she going to survive?
Exactly.
Right? And that experience, as traumatic as it was, also informs you and gives you the ear to hear someone else and be able to speak to them in a way that nobody else can.
Right.
And so I see you, I don't know if you already have something like this, but I see you even forming like a support group for parents, maybe even specifically parents of minority children who have this condition, because there's just certain things I can talk to them till I'm blue in the face, and I can talk, I'm a speaker, but it's not going to resonate. It's not going to track the way it would track from you, because you have the experience that I just do not.
Well, my overall goal, and I'll give you a little bit about it, because what I used to do before I decided to go the route of a scholarship was I used to do a fundraiser in honor of my daughter every year, and I would donate those items to Levine's Children's Hospital, making sure that the cardiac floor get first dibs, and then they can distribute them to anyone else. But then after her last open heart surgery last year, I said, you know what? It's a hole that's really never going to be filled, and it's good, but I need to get longevity out of it, and I want to make a different impact from an education standpoint.
Yes.
So I told myself this while I was going through all this stuff last year. And so I just reached out to MUSC. Why MUSC? Because I have my best friend, my sorority sister, she graduated from MUSC. I know some other people in the field who graduated from MUSC, and I said I want to keep my money in the state of South Carolina.
Okay.
So I took that, and then I just started calling, and I got in touch with one of the coordinators for the colleges down there, and it just went from there. But I disrupted their pattern.
Genius is a disruptor.
Because the guy told me on the phone, he said, I would have never thought to look for someone like you. He said, our donors are typically white, rich, or well off. They usually come in their money through someone passing away and they inherited some money, or someone who just, they just making a whole bunch of money from their career. Yeah. And he said, I would have never thought to look for you. How did you get my information? And I said, I just went on Google and start calling. And I just so happened fell into the right place. And so from there, I mean, I had to step outside of my box, right? Since I've been a little girl, I've always been in parades, all kind of stuff. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I really don't like that stuff. But it's one of the things that I had to do. And so I had to step out of my box and just say, you know what, it's something in me that don't like asking people for help. But on this journey, I had to ask for help because this is something that's massive, having a child with a congenital heart defect. But I said, you know what, I'm just going to try. I actually went to one donor and they gave a substantial donation, a $5,000 donation. And that just because I stepped outside of that box and I just made myself vulnerable. And it worked and it paid off. And that just kind of gave me the steam and the energy just to keep going and to keep pushing. And we exceeded our initial goal of 10,000 because the overall goal is 50,000 to get it endowed. I've raised over 12,000 last year by myself. Hey. And so I'm trying to best that this year and each year. And then once we get 50,000, it becomes endowed. But my overall goal is to make this a foundation, not just a scholarship. The scholarship is just going to be like you think about a tree with branches. It's going to be one of the branches. But I see myself going to HBCUs. And I really want to get to those students who are serious about cardiac health. First and foremost, pediatrics, but overall, adults too, because it is a problem. It's one of the leading causes of death in our community. And if we suffer a stroke or a heart attack, bystanders just keep on going. They don't even listen to us. They just keep on going.
Because they'll assume that, your lifestyle is unhealthy. So this is almost like you brought this on yourself. It's like, no, this is a congenital, sir.
Yeah. And right. that's another part of the education that I will eventually come across, because I had to explain to my dad, I was like, a congenital heart defect is very different from someone who had a healthy heart, born with a healthy heart, but then because of lifestyle, diet, or whatever, their heart became, ill. That's very different. So the treatment is different. Congenital is she's born that way. It was defective in my womb. So I didn't have any control over that. So that the way you treat it is very different.
Yep. But you have to get beyond. The education doesn't just start with the families. I heard you say this, but I'm gonna make sure to make it explicit. The education has to go into even those who are going into the medical field to have the distinction between the congenital and lifestyle. And not just put it in one lump, like, all right, you come in with, all right, you need to change your cholesterol, like, let's keep it moving. Like, no, like lay off the fried chicken, like, okay, that was racist. Like, no, it's more than what, like my daughter is, 3 months old. That's not what it is, right?
Right.
So here's what I see, Tia. I'll ask you offline what sorority you're in, but the sorority that you're in, first of all, hold on, pause. Can you just put what's the name of your website?
It's nylaheartscholarship.com. And you can go in there and you can find out more about our story, find out more about Nyla. I can say you can't paint all of these children in the same way, in the same likeness, because the severity of it can go on a sliding scale, even though their journey could be the same. But Nyla's a typical kid. She runs around, she plays, she loves to be in the kitchen and cook. She likes to wrestle with her little brother. She loves to skate. So, she's a regular kid, but she just has a special heart.
Sure. And you have a special heart too. You have a special heart now that's been grieved, and you're using that grief to not just say, woe is me, woe is Nyla.
Nyla.
but well, let's bring some attention to others who are suffering through this too, and bring some resources and bring some educational
Right.
highlights to it. So here's what I see. I don't know how good you are at graphic arts, because you said this is your talent, but I see you even having like an art gallery, and it doesn't have to be centered around your work, but it can be, hey, I want all artists to come in and have, you know, a silent auction where that becomes a fundraiser and it's supported by your sorority. The thing about having a vision that's larger than yourself, you have to begin to tap into organizations that are larger than you, that you have a commonality with. And so, and even sometimes that you don't have a commonality with, because it sounds like that's what you've done as well. But I see you being able to raise funds that way as well. And though anybody can contribute their art, your art specifically, it's nothing like capturing. Art can really move people into empathy. And if you begin to capture some of, you know, maybe showing what a defective heart looks like, maybe sketching, you know, children and being like, hey, this child looks normal, but then having like a picture of the heart next to it, like, but this is what's going on the inside of them, and bringing awareness to and trying to normalize the things that you've experienced in your life, but then putting it on canvas and then raising funds that way. That's a way to add another branch to that trunk towards that foundation that you have. So that's one thing that I see you being able to do. I eventually see you a little bit. I see you getting into, you know, you talked about doing things that you don't like. I see you having a platform to be able to have these discussions and reach people on both sides of the fence, those who have been impacted and those who would be, diagnosing these conditions. So I'm thrilled for what you're already doing, and I'm happy for where this can go. And you just got to know, Tia, that this is your genius.
I think I have more than one though.
Yeah, that's what you'll discover. That's exactly what you'll discover, because me personally, I have multiple things that I hate, and I have multiple talents. And so it begins like this. What else can I build? What other puzzle? My wife, Kiana, during the pandemic, she was like, you know, everybody started putting together puzzles, right? We put one puzzle, and then it was like, oh, well, okay, we did it as a family. Let's do another. We're on our 6th puzzle now. This last one she did pretty much all by herself. And that's how genius begins to work. And it doesn't just inspire you to create another, to put something else together. Somebody else would be like, you know what? You have a lot of drive and passion for what you're doing. I have a passion, but it's for something else. And if I see you doing it, I can do it too. And that's how genius is beyond just ourselves. It begins to impact the people around us and lets people know, hey, look, if my light can shine, your light can shine too. So I don't know where you live, but I appreciate what you're doing in your community, because you're giving other people, you're modeling something for other people to begin to say, you know what, I have something that I should be doing too.
Yeah. And I didn't think about it this way, Reggie, but in speaking to my scholarship coordinator, he said, what you're doing is philanthropy work. He said, you have moved from just donating to, he said, think about a seed and you planting a tree. He said, you're basically creating a legacy. I didn't get into it for that. I got into it for, hey, I want to see more of us being represented, because that's going to depend on the type of care we get when you're in the hospital, when you're in the doctor's office. You don't want to, you know, be, what do you call it? Where it's like falling, like you're tone deaf. You don't want to be tone deaf to someone else's plight or their problems. So that's what I was looking at. And I had an opportunity to meet some of these very bright, intelligent young kids at MUSC. They would do me proud. Unfortunately, by the time the scholarship goes into effect, they will already be in their profession. But this scholarship specifically will be for a perfusionist. And a lot of people don't even know what that is. But if you ever have a loved one or a friend who is going in for heart surgery, that equipment, which they usually call the heart bypass machine, you have to have a very intelligent person to run that equipment. So that is what the perfusionists would do. They are part of the surgical team. So their role is very important. So if you ever think about going into for surgery and you're like, what's taking so long? They've already rolled them back. What's taking so long? Part of that is set up. You have your anesthesiologist, you have the surgeon and his probably assistant in there. You have the perfusionist, and you have some other people who is part of the team. So they are very instrumental to your person, your loved one surviving, because that's what keeps the blood and everything pumping to keep that
Right.
person alive. Yeah.
You see what you're doing though? Like now you're highlighting a whole new profession that most of us have never heard of before. Somebody will hear that and be say, you know what though? I feel like I could do that. But you
Mhm.
can't know that you can do a thing if you don't know it exists.
That's right.
So you're raising awareness on so many different levels, and that's genius. That's genius. I want to end with this because this is what I'm hearing in my mind. There's a scripture that when it talks about the parable of the talents in the Bible, one of the things that he repeats, the king or the master repeats to his servants that give him a return on his investment. He says, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many." And I see that happening with you. You were faithful over a few things. Look, this is what I see, and this is what I want to impact. But now the vision has grown before you. And it's like now what was a scholarship is becoming a foundation. What was awareness about the condition has become awareness about what a perfusionist is. Right? I hope I said that correctly.
You did.
And so the vision is getting larger, but you have the traction and you have the small successes that might have even stemmed from failure to begin to say like, yeah, I know how to navigate this though. And I'm pulling resources, people around me to raise awareness and to partner with me. Because again, genius is not about the individual, it's about partnering. Hey, look, you do well at this, but I don't do well at that. Let's partner, and vice versa. I do well at this, but you don't do so well at that. But together we can do a thing that apart we could not do.
Right. Right.
So Tia, I'm gonna end this how I started it and ask you, Tia, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I am 100% a genius.
Oh wow, 100%. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So with that, I want to thank you again for taking time to be on the show. This has been, I'm switching it. This has been Manu Forte Ministries because we got into the faith a little bit. This has been Manu Forte Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I have been your host, Reggie Key, and this has been my genius host, my genius guest, Tia Brown.
Thanks, Reggie.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.